Now, Dan Perry is an Israeli affairs analyst and the former regional editor of the Associated Press in the Middle East, and he's joining us live from Tel Aviv. Thank you, as always, for your time, Dan. We appreciate it. Iran's foreign minister is going to be meeting his British, French and German counterparts, as we've been reporting, as well as the EU's top diplomat in Geneva tomorrow. And Abbas Araghchi said the meeting came at the request of the European states. How do you think the Israeli government, how do you think Netanyahu is viewing this meeting? Will he be worried at all?
I think Netanyahu, who has a history of indifference towards European public opinion and European leadership, views the Europeans as secondary players, and the main focus is on what is said from Washington and what will be the decision of Trump as to whether they join the fray, and in particular, send bunker busters at Fordo. If Trump does that, that might enable a climb down where the Israelis and the Americans declare victory and say they've destroyed the nuclear program. As for the Europeans, look, Israel would be unwise to totally ignore them because the EU is Israel's largest trading partner, and Israel's an associate member of the EU, and if they were to be kicked out, that would be extremely inconvenient for Israel in a whole variety of ways, not just economically. But, you know, I think the sense in Israel, whether Netanyahu feels this way or not, I don't know, but the sense in Israel is that the Europeans and to a degree the Arabs are playing games when they express reservations about Israel's action. And I think they focus, for example, on a statement from Friedrich Merz, Germany's new chancellor, 2 days ago, where he said in a media interview that was obviously orchestrated, that he thinks Israel is basically doing the dirty work of the West and doing everyone else's work. And he seemed to express almost gratitude that the nuclear program might be eliminated. So I think Israel thinks that whatever they say in public, the West and to a degree the Arab Middle East will owe it a debt of gratitude more than anything else.
All right, for now, that is Dan Perry joining us live from Tel Aviv. I know we'll be hearing from you again soon. Thank you. Let's go to Dan Perry now, who's an Israeli affairs analyst, the former regional editor of the Associated Press in the Middle East, and he is joining us from Tel Aviv. Thank you very much for staying with us, Dan. Picking up where we left off in the last hour, there are reports that the German Chancellor, Friedrich Merz, called on Israel to take moderate and a controlled approach in Iran in a phone call with Netanyahu. But given he's also said that he supports Israel's military action in Iran, what message do you think Netanyahu will be getting?
I think the message Israel is receiving, rightly or wrongly, what they're perceiving is that in one way or another, they do have the support of the world, including perhaps surprisingly the Europeans, as long as this does not become another disaster with massive civilian casualties. I know there have been some already, and that's terrible, but it can't go the way that Gaza went.
Dan Perry is an Israeli affairs analyst and the former regional editor of the Associated Press in the Middle East, and he is joining us live from Tel Aviv. Thank you for staying with us, Mr. Perry. I would imagine that you watched the White House press briefing that's been taking place in the last hour. Your reaction to Trump's message conveyed by the press secretary that a decision to go to war with Iran will be made in 2 weeks. What do you read into this?
Well, you know, normally I would disbelieve anything said under the fog of war and, you know, in a situation where disinformation it almost begs itself because you put your enemy off guard and maybe they won't be prepared for an attack to come tomorrow. I just don't know. In this case, I'm inclined to believe it because Trump doesn't want to be attacking anyone. His brand is completely opposite to that. He hates entanglements, military entanglements in far-off countries. He has pledged to bring peace, not to amplify a war that he let start on his watch. I think he sort of let loose the dogs here to create pressure on Iran. And then if they are prepared to come back to the table, this time slightly tail between legs and a little bit in a weaker position and perhaps more flexible as a consequence, I think he would want to test that. You can always bunker bust Fordo later. So the logic of that suggests to me that this might be true.
Do you think that Netanyahu will be disappointed that he'll have to wait up to 2 weeks to know whether the U.S. is going to give more military support?
Yeah, the Israeli government very obviously wanted this to happen quickly, and they wanted something very specific. They don't have bunker busters, and they can't declare the Iranian nuclear program to be destroyed until Fordo is taken out, and that requires the U.S. to step in. The idea that all of this back and forth rocket fire should last for another 2 weeks would be nerve-wracking to people not only in Israel, but I think also in Iran. I think everyone wants, if something's going to happen, for it to happen quicker. But look, I don't think Israel will continue the war in this scenario. What seems likely is that since Iran has already stated that they're prepared to end everything and resume negotiations. If Israel stops the attacks, Trump will compel Israel to stop the attacks and let the negotiations
Do
take
you
their
think
course.
that Trump could even convince Israel to stop attacks during this 2-week period?
I never for 1 second believe that Israel would have dared do this without the acquiescence of the U.S. Israel depends far too much on the U.S. So if that is what the U.S. wants, and there's logic to it that is clear, stop everything. Iran will not attack you. We'll see if maybe we can get them to hand over all the enriched material at Fordo without needing to attack Fordo and risking escalation that could involve attacks on American assets in the Gulf and a global oil crisis because Iran blocks the Straits of Hormuz. It makes sense. It makes narrative sense. It makes logical sense, assuming that everyone retains the right to and the intention, if this should not work, relatively quickly to resume the attacks, and at that point it would be an American-Israeli attack. I think the idea of taking time out and seeing if the Iranians have a different, more flexible posture in renewed negotiations which anyway had been intended for this week, is not illogical. And yes, I think it can convince Netanyahu. I think Israel would have little choice but to comply.
And what calculations do you think Netanyahu will be making right now? Will they be thinking that if a US decision is made against a war, will they be looking at their options then?
Look, he knows the people of Israel don't want a forever war here in Iran, and the situation is dangerous on a home front. No one's very happy about what's going on, even if it went somewhat better than might have been expected. As long as he can declare victory and present a situation where Iran's nuclear program has been degraded, I think it's a workable narrative for him. But as I say, I believe he has little choice on a geopolitical front than to comply if indeed this is what the U.S. would require. I'm not sure. As I said before, I'm inclined to believe that's where it's going, given what I heard and given what I know of Trump. He's a deal maker and he smells that he can make a deal. But I can't be sure. It could very well be disinformation.
And just quickly, Dan, one of the points that you made, you think that Netanyahu would be satisfied with simply degrading Iran's nuclear program, because everything we've heard so far is about destroying the program.
Yeah, but Israel doesn't have bunker-busting bombs that are required to destroy Fordo. So Israel needs the U.S. in order to fully destroy the program. Israel needs the U.S. either to compel a now frightened Iran into agreeing to hand over the material, and then there is no Fordo, or it would need the U.S. to indeed attack Fordo after the negotiations failed. But either way, whatever he's thinking, and he always has his own political calculations and machinations, whatever all those may be, I don't think he really has the option of going against an express request of Trump at the moment of highest conceivable geopolitical tension. That simply cannot be. And whoever doesn't understand this doesn't really know what goes on between Israel and the U.S.
Dan Perry, thank you very much for your perspective. We appreciate it.